Hello and welcome back, MTG Burgeoning Community. We are here with another installment of our Up and Up series, and in today's video, we are going to update and upgrade Kenrith, the Returned King, and his 5-color Tolarian-Community-College influenced EDH deck. What's up, MTG Burgeoning Community? Here we are with another installment of the Up and Up series, and in today's video we are going to talk about Kenrith, the Returned King, and some updates and upgrades made from his Tolarian-Community-College influenced commander deck. Many moons ago, the professor from Tolarian Community College created a series of top 8 must-have color-specific commander cards, as you can see at the top of your screen now. White, blue, black, red, green. Well, each of those 8 cards are represented on that top tier for a total of 40 cards. It was around these 40 cards that this deck was going to be built. After completing his series and getting the last of the 8 cards, we had our 40 cards, our core 40. Kenrith, the Returned King, was chosen as the commander because, let's be honest, he's one of the best 5-color commanders in the game, and this turned in and evolved into 5-color good stuff. However, I did not want to include any other monocolor cards in the deck because, again, this was to be influenced by Tolarian Community College. So with that in mind, and with one commander and a core of 40 monocolor cards, the next step was to include 10 of the most popular and well-known artifacts in the EDH format, which you can see here on the left. After that, we needed to instill some win conditions into this deck because we do not want to just be spinning our wheels showing off the goodness of 5 colors. With that being said, it was my task to include from each 2-color combination, so from each guild, the one card that I felt would be the best way to add a win condition to the deck. So as you can see, the top card being Azorius there, Dream Trawler being the best opportunity to act as a win condition. We're not going to go through all of the cards here. That may be for a deck tech update in the future. After we established the artifacts and the multicolored cards, we had our deck of 60 cards on one commander, which led to us installing a land base of 39 lands. In this deck today, we are going to update that land base, make a few other changes in order to make this 5-color Kenny good stuff 5-color Kenny great stuff. So let's begin with the land revisions, and this is going to be pretty self-explanatory. Back when this deck was first constructed, we had 3 copies of each basic land for a total of 15. We're keeping 5, we're keeping 1 of each color, and we are going to remove 2 plains, 2 islands, 2 swamps, 2 mountains, and 2 forests. By subtracting these 10 basic lands and adding these 10 lands, it's going to allow us to play our cards with a greater deal of ease and a greater, more efficiency. So taking the place of these 10 basic lands, we are going to include all 5 triomes. The Indatha, the Rogwin, the Zagoth, the Savai, and the Ketria. So 5 basics coming out, 5 triomes going in. Additionally, for the other 5 basic lands that are coming out, we are going to include a copy in their replacement, 1 copy of Command Beacon, which allows us to get our commander from the command zone right to our hand. Kenny is a CMC of 5, and he is not well liked in my metagame, so he does see the command zone. He makes multiple trips there, so including a land that allows us to get him into our hand and not so much having to worry about commander attacks, well, that's a lot better than including a basic plains. Next up, we are going to include a copy of Temple of the False God. As you can see with the Dream Trawler over there, that's just one of the many mana-intensive, game-ending spells from the multicolor portion of this deck, including a land that can turn sideways for 2 colorless mana, as long as we have at least 5 total lands, is advantageous for us to include. 1 copy, of course, of Temple of the False God. Another land that's going to be very useful in a 5-color deck, we're going to include a copy of Reflecting Pool. With Command Tower already being included in this deck, if we have the luxury of having a Command Tower and Reflecting Pool out on the battlefield under our control at the same time, well, for all intents and purposes, we have 2 Command Towers in play. So Reflecting Pool in, and should work a lot better than a basic mountain. Next up, and providing our opponents with a little bit of group huggery, I suppose, we're going to include a copy of Forbidden Orchard. We tap for 1 mana of any color. However, when we do, target opponent creates a 1/1 colorless spirit creature token. Please note, as I have said numerous times since really reading this card and understanding what it does, the spirit token does not fly. With so many big bad flyers in our deck with evasion and creatures that are, let's say, tramply too, giving our opponents a 1/1 evasionless spirit creature token for adding 1 mana to our mana pool is a trade I'm willing to make every day of the week and twice on Friday Night Magic. And to round out the changes of the land base, we're going to include 1 copy of Mana Confluence. We tap to pay a life, and we add 1 mana of any color to our mana pool. Playing 5-colored goodness, it's going to make sense to include as many lands as possible that can produce more than 1 color of mana. So exiling these 10 basic lands for 1 copy of each of the Triomes, a Mana Confluence, a Forbidden Orchard, a Reflecting Pool, and a couple of lands that don't produce colored mana seems like a very favorable and preferable option. So 10 basics out, 10 non-basics going in. Staying with the idea of mana, but not necessarily focusing on the land base, we are going to take out our copy of Commander's Sphere. It is what it is. It's a mana rock for 3. We tap for 1 mana for the purposes of this deck. We tap for 1 mana of any color, and we can sacrifice it to draw a card. It is what it is. It's going to come out, and I think its replacement is going to help us speed up our game plan a lot better, and that's going to be a copy of Mana Crypt. So with Command Sphere coming out, yes, we lose the 1-colored mana, and we do lose the option of drawing a card, but replacing it with Mana Crypt gives us speed. We have to be careful, because if you have luck like I do, and I have been keeping track, and I'm always on the lose more life than not portion of coin flipping against Mana Crypt, just be careful, because the 3 damage can catch up to you. However, to trade out a Commander Sphere and its versatility for the speed of Mana Crypt and getting our game plan and our game ending creatures such as Dream Trawler in play quicker just makes more sense from a gameplay standpoint. So Commander's Sphere out and Mana Crypt in. And with that being said, there are only 3 other changes to the deck that we're going to make today. And what we're trying to do is we're trying to isolate some of the gold cards that were included as a way in which to bring a greater sense of power to the finishers in this deck. And I do believe that with each subsequent change that we have here, I think that we're able to get to a point where it is an upgrade, and that is what the Up and Up series is. It is this card more valuable than the card it's replacing, and why, for the purposes of this deck? And let's get right to it. The Golgari selection of the gold cards for this deck originally was 1 copy of Pernicious Deed. Now, granted, there are not an overwhelming number of options in Golgari colors that can be considered a game-ending selection for a 5-color good stuff deck. And at the time, Pernicious Deed seems to be the one that would cause the most impact during a multiplayer game. However, what I began to figure out is that with all of the number of artifacts and enchantments that we have, we're doing just as much damage to ourselves as we are to the table. Granted, there were times in which a timely Pernicious Deed was able to wipe out an imposing token army or some planeswalkers that were well guarded by pillow forts. However, I just think that with the amount of removal already present in the deck, losing something like Pernicious Deed for a win option seems like it could be a viable change. So at this point in time, Pernicious Deed is going to come out, which is slightly weakening our overall removal, slightly. And Pernicious Deed is going to be replaced by a copy of Spiritmonger. Spiritmonger is 3 black and a green for a 6/6. It's a beast, and whenever it deals damage to a creature, we put a +1/+1 counter on it. We can tap a black to regenerate Spiritmonger, and let's not undersell that. That can survive an awful lot of board wipes as long as we keep the mana available to do so. We can also tap green, and Spiritmonger becomes the color of our choice until end of turn. Now, right now, here initially, I can't think of that being overly favorable outside of maybe any kind of color-specific bounce spells or, targeted spells where we can say, okay, we'll just change Spiritmonger to red if somebody decides to cast a spell that says return all green permanents to their owner's hand. So although there is some built-in versatility with the becoming a different color until end of turn, I think the 6/6 getting bigger and bigger and bigger with every creature it deals damage with the option of regenerating it as well. I think Spiritmonger provides a greater sense of maybe not fear, but maybe a greater sense of our opponents have to worry about this a lot in damaging them than more so a Pernicious Deed, because a Pernicious Deed is going to also deal damage. It's not dealing damage, it's also going to hurt us. So I think in the long run, a Spiritmonger has more practicality in trying to bring down the life totals of our opponents than the Pernicious Deed. So at this time, we're going to try the Spiritmonger in place of the Pernicious Deed, and we'll see how that change. We'll see how it goes. All right, now, next up, we are going to replace the copy of Una, Queen of the Fae. Now, Una is an interesting inclusion here because at the time I was extremely excited to get her into this deck. She's a 5/5 flyer, so a big, beefy, evasive creature that's fantastic. And the mana cost is feasible as well with 3 colorless and any combination of 3 Dimir mana. Additionally, its ability to pump out a swarm of fairies, or whatever a group of fairies would be called, that eludes me at the moment, but a bunch of fairies by tapping X and a blue or a black, and we pick a color, and target opponent removes the top X cards of their library from the game. For each card of the chosen color removed this way, we create a 1/1 blue and black fairy rogue creature token with flying and put that into play. However, for me and my experiences, particularly in my meta, the X and blue or black ability fell short numerous times. I don't recall ever playing with this deck against a monocolor deck. At least, I think the best that Una did was against a 3-color deck, and even that, pumping all of my mana into her, only generated a few fairy tokens. So a 5/5 flyer for 6 with an ability that really, it's very tempting to use, but the mana could be spent better off somewhere else. So as enticing and as infatuating as Una is, she's going to come out for a different option. So Una's going to come out, and in Una's place is going to be the Mind Leech Mass for a slightly higher, for a higher converted mana cost, or mana value, 5 a blue and 2 black. It's a 6/6 trampler, so there is some evasion. It doesn't fly, but it has trample. 6/6 trampler, and when Mind Leech Mass deals combat damage to a player, we may look at that player's hand. If we do, we may play a non-land card in it without paying that card's mana cost. So in a way, we're replacing a creature with evasion that allows us to act as a mana sink for minimal return, and we're replacing it with a creature with evasion, slightly higher CMC, that if it does land damage onto an opponent, we get to cast a card out of their hand for free. I think Mind Leech Mass brings greater staying power to our game than Una does. And now the flying is nice, don't get me wrong, because not everybody is always prepared for flyers, and the board is usually swarming with a bunch of walking creatures. However, with that 6/6 trample, I do believe that we're going to be able to get through with Mind Leech Mass and possibly cast some very, very nice spells out of our opponent's hands for free. Mind Leech Mass in. Una, Queen of the Fae, is out. One revision left, and this one may be the toughest one to call. Because I love the creature coming out. I really do. And it has helped to synergize. It has helped to fill the hand. It's helped to ramp out. But again, these revisions are about trying to find some additional ways to win, some additional win conditions. So when the deck was first constructed, excuse me, the Simic option was Thrasios, Triton Hero. For a green and a blue, it's a 1/3 Merfolk Wizard that when we tap 4, we scry 1, then we reveal the top card of our library. And if it's a land, it goes into play, and if not, we draw a card. So this was our Simic addition to this deck, to the 5-color goodness. And it was a great mana sink. I mean, granted, it is a lightning rod for removal, and it should be for as powerful as it is. Its toughness is only 3, however, so even the slightest amount of damage can send Thrasios right to the graveyard. I mean, our initial investment of green and blue into this creature, it's not really off-putting to lose it. However, once it's gone and we don't have the ability to activate the 4 to scry 1, it hurts a little bit. I mean, this was included in the deck to act as the Simic win condition. And unfortunately, although it does help us to ramp and get cards into our hand, it's not as win condition-y as I would like to have in a card from a guild when we're trying to send some combat damage in. And trust me, after playing with this deck as much as I have, the game lulls on our side. We can put as many cards in our hand as we want, but when so many of the cards are removal spells or cards that are not going to help us win the game, Thrasios tends to just kind of sit out on the battlefield, and although we amass cards in our hand and potentially lands onto the battlefield, our opponents are improving their board state greater by putting more and more creatures into play. And trust me when I say, taking out Thrasios is not an easy decision to make. However, we need more ways to win. And with that being said, Thrasios is going to come out at this time, and in Thrasios' place is going to be one copy of Koma, Cosmos Serpent. Yes, the mana cost is sky high compared to Thrasios' green and a blue, because Koma is 3 double green and double blue. So we're taking a 2 CMC creature and jacking it up to a 7 CMC creature. But it may be worth it. Koma is a 6/6 and it can't be regenerated. At the beginning of each upkeep, not just our upkeep, at the beginning of each upkeep, we create a 3/3 blue serpent creature token named Koma's Coil. We sacrifice a serpent, which for the purposes of this deck would only be either Koma or the Koma's Coil creature tokens that he creates at the beginning of each upkeep. When we do sacrifice another serpent, we get to pick one. We tap target permanent, and its activated abilities can't be activated this turn, or we choose that Koma Cosmos Serpent gains indestructible until end of turn, able to survive nearly every single possible board wipe. What do you think, MTG Burgeoning fans? A better option for closing out a game. Koma coming in to replace Thrasios. Its spell cannot be countered, and as long as we get to the beginning of an upkeep, we're going to be able to protect Koma with the ability to sacrifice a serpent, the Koma's Coil, to give it indestructible. Plus, if we're able to go a round of turns or 2 in order to create additional Koma's Coil creature tokens, and we can tap down some permanents, send in some of our biggins, and really bring down the life totals of our opponents. So we're going to test it out. We're going to see Thrasios out, Koma Cosmos Serpent going in. And that is this installment of the Up and Up series. We updated and upgraded Kenrith, the Returned King, Tolarian-Community-College-influenced 5-color good stuff deck. What do you think? Leave me your suggestions and your comments in the comment section below. This is MTG Burgeoning, your channel for all things Magic.